divide upon 73 different sects. Again, the Prophet is not clarifying this matter is permissible. He's not saying this is a noble thing or a good thing. Rather, as Shaykh Uthaymeen has mentioned, Ikhwan, he is informing on amr waqi', on that which is going to be the reality of the ummah. It is going to divide upon 73 different sects. So Shaykh al-Albani goes on to clarify on this particular matter. If this ummah has divided into 73 different sects, Ikhwan, then yes, we are all Muslim. But what is your understanding of Islam with regards to those 73 different sects? And Imam al-Manawi, in his tremendous book, Fayd al-Qadir, his explanation of the ahadith of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he clarifies the meaning of this particular narration, Ikhwan, and he mentions that those groups that have divided into those 73 sects, and of course the 73rd of them being Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, he mentions that they actually break down into a lesser category or a more specific category of 4 groups. And in some wordings, he mentions, some scholars say 6 groups. And from those 6 groups, they go into different branches. They branch off into different groups of innovators. And those innovators ultimately lead up to the 73 different sects, the 72 different sects, and of course the 73rd being Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. The point of this particular narration, Ikhwan, Shaykh al-Albani goes on to clarify, Ikhwan, that it is not enough for us to make this statement, we are Muslims. And it's not enough, again, for us, Ikhwan, to leave it out there like that. That innovation is something, it's some type of force or thing that takes place out in the world, but no one really knows who's doing it. No one is actually the possessor of innovation in our time, as it seems, but rather everyone is merely mentioning these particular narrations again in a general way. Coming down to this narration that I've mentioned from the Messenger of Allah ﷺ with regards to innovation and the innovators, and I wanted to discuss today, Ikhwan, the first group to deviate in Islam. The first group to deviate in Islam, who are known as the Khawaarij. They are known as al-Khawaarij. And the scholars have mentioned, from them Shaykh Ahmed al-Najmi, Ikhwan, in some questions and answers with regards to the Khawaarij, as I'll discuss this inshallah ta'ala in a second, because we constantly mention the people of today of Takfir, who will be discussing a bit with regards to their implementation of Islam and understanding of Islam. We constantly compare those of today to those of the past. But the scholars have clarified that these Khawaarij of today have went to levels that the Khawaarij of the past didn't even go to. I'll give you one example quickly. The Khawaarij of the past, we'll be discussing them. They were extreme with regards to those who made sin, those who made specifically major sin against the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, against al-Islam. So what they would do, Ikhwan, is if one made a major sin in al-Islam, they would make takfir upon him. They would excommunicate him or remove him from al-Islam. They would say he is no longer Muslim. These sins that we're discussing now are of the level of murder, fornication, whatever it may be. And so there are stories, Ikhwan, of the past that one of the Khawaarij stole, and when he came to his senses, he cut off his own hand. This is a story that has come down in the histories of the Khawaarij. Some of the narrations that we'll be discussing, inshallah ta'ala, today. But another narration that reaches us, Ikhwan, with regards to the Khawaarij and their levels of deviance with regard to this matter, is that the Khawaarij were known, Ikhwan, if someone lied. As lying in Islam is from the greatest of sins in Islam, to lie. Specifically to lie upon the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. The Khawaarij was so severe against those who lied, and they were specifically so severe against those who lied upon the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, that they would remove you from Islam if you were caught lying upon the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. So because of this, the scholars of the Salaf, because we know with regard to accepting narration of the innovators, and there's elaboration in this matter, the scholars in most cases would take narrations from the Khawaarij. Why? Because the issue of narration is that they were so strict and stringent with regard to lying on the Prophet, they will make you a kafir, that they were known to be at least truthful in that which they narrated on the Messenger of Allah, as they feared being removed from al-Islam. And then Shaykh Uthaymeen, Shaykh Zayd al-Madkhali, and other than them say, fast forward to the Khawaarij of our day, hum min akdhab an-nas, from the most lying of the people. They no longer have this idea, Ikhwan, that to lie upon the Messenger of Allah or to lie upon in the deen of al-Islam, they remove others for other affairs, whether it be, as we said, the issues of al-Hakimiyya and all these other affairs, as we'll discuss inshallah ta'ala. But with regard to these matters, from these matters, as the scholars have mentioned, from these affairs, that they're lying in these days is different from their affair in the past. Another point, Ya Ikhwan, and this is a tremendous point. The Messenger of Allah in describing the Khawaarij, after calling them kilabun nar, the dogs of the hellfire, And in another narration, the Prophet ﷺ said, if I met them, I would kill them, the killing of Ad. If anyone knows the story of Ad and Thamud, fi riwayah Thamud, and how Allah destroyed those people with great winds and with a great cry until they were left like the stalks of the date palm trees, ikhwan, left hollow like the date palm trees in the earth. It mentions, ikhwan, the Prophet ﷺ said about them from those narrations, يَقْتُلُونَ أَهْلَ الْإِيمَانِ وَيَتْرُكُونَ أَهْلَ الْأَوْثَانِ, that they kill the people of belief. They fight and kill the Muslims, and they leave the disbelievers alone. Fast forward to this day of ours, and the Khawaarij killed everyone. كُلُّ مَنْ هَبَّ وَدَبَّ, everyone who comes and goes, ikhwan. Non-Muslim, Muslim alike. Everyone's blood, ikhwan, with the Khawaarij is valid or is permissible to spill. There's a story of one of the people of the past, ikhwan, who came in the generations after the companions of the Messenger of Allah, known as Abdullah ibn Khabbab. Abdullah ibn Khabbab. It mentions in the narration, ikhwan, that one time the Jews passed by a group of the Khawaarij. A group of the Jews passed by a group of the Khawaarij, and they actually cursed the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What did the Khawaarij do, ikhwan? They let them continue to pass. When Abdullah ibn Khabbab came by, ikhwan, as we said, from the noble scholars of Islam, from the noble tabi'een, those who follow the generation of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the companions, they said to him, narrate to us upon your father. Narrate to us upon your father. So he narrated the hadith of the Messenger of Allah. If two Muslims meet with their swords, التقى مسلمان بسيفيهما فالقاتل المقتول في النار. If two Muslims meet with their sword, then the one who kills and the one who was killed are both in the hellfire. He was making a subtle refutation upon them, ikhwan. This shows us the position of the scholars of the Salaf. They took every opportunity, ikhwan, to refute the innovators. So when they asked him to narrate a narration, he could have narrated a narration upon sadaqah. He could have narrated a narration upon birr al-walidain. He could have narrated a narration upon, the affairs are tremendous. And the door is vast, it's wide of the narration that he could have narrated. He took the opportunity, ikhwan, to refute the innovators and that which they were upon, because they were Khawaarij and he knew they were used to spilling the blood of the Muslims. When Abdullah ibn Khabbab narrated this narration to the Khawaarij, what was their mawqif, ikhwan? They murdered him, and they murdered his slave girl. She was pregnant. They cut open her stomach until the baby fell out on the ground. Now we look at them and look at their affair, ikhwan. The Yahud come by and curse the Messenger of Allah, and they leave them to go. A Muslim comes by, ikhwan. A Muslim comes by, ikhwan, and he narrates a hadith on the Prophet, an authentic narration, and they murder him and murder his slave girl. In another affair, ikhwan, to show the evil of these individuals, when one of the noble scholars of the Salaf, when he was descending from the minbar on Yawm al-Jumu'ah, and they said to him, why don't you curse your fathers? Meaning from the Muslims. Why don't you curse your fathers who do such and sin and all kinds of transgression against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So that noble scholar of the past, ikhwan, he says, when was the last time you cursed Fir'aun? So they looked at him and they were surprised. What kind of statement? Curse Fir'aun? What are you talking about? What is about cursing Fir'aun? So that noble Salafi, he said, ikhwan, you want me to curse my fathers who were from the Muslims, who prostrated to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his forgiveness, but yet you won't even curse Fir'aun, the worst of creation? So this shows us, ikhwan, the level of the likes of the Khawaarij and how innovation, ikhwan, how it blinds the man, how it takes the man from his rushd, how it takes the man from his thinking and his understanding unto the levels, ikhwan, until he's not able to even reason and fathom anymore that which is very basic before him. That which is very basic before him. And the Khawaarij, ikhwan, are known for taking the narrations of the Prophet ﷺ, the aam narrations, the general narrations, and making them specific to all of the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So in speaking about this particular matter, ikhwan, I wanted to give this brief introduction with regards to innovation in al-Islam, ikhwan, something brief and something of innovation and the evils of innovation, ikhwan, so that we can kind of take note to that which we are discussing bi-idhnillahi tabaraka wa ta'ala. And there's no way to understand this fitna that is amongst us right now, ikhwan, of takfir and of irhab, of terrorism, except to understand it, ikhwan, in light of the history of this sect, the Khawaarij. And as we had mentioned, ikhwan, they were the first group, the first sect to deviate in al-Islam. And to show you, ikhwan, the level of dedication of the Khawaarij, and we'll be discussing something of that in a second, bi-idhnillah, but just to show you the level of dedication of the Khawaarij. There was a man in the past known as Yazid al-Faqir. Yazid al-Faqir. Shaykh Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad, ikhwan, he brings this particular narration in the explanation of the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi to explain the importance of sitting with the scholars of Islam, the true scholars of the Salaf, when one makes Umrah or Hajj, taking the opportunity not just to make Umrah, not just to make Hajj, but to take the opportunity to sit with the scholars of Islam to benefit from them. Yazid al-Faqir mentions, ikhwan, that he was from the group of the Khawaarij. And before they went to make Hajj, they actually had a meeting amongst themselves. They had a sitting in which they agreed upon themselves that they were going to go make Hajj, and then afterward they were going to spread their ideology. After making Hajj, they were going to go about the people who made Umrah, or the people who made Hajj, or whatever it may be, and they were going to spread the ideology of the Khawaarij. So he mentions in the narration, Yazid al-Faqir mentions in the narration, that when they got to Al-Medina, the city of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they found the companion of the Prophet ﷺ giving narration. Abdullah, in the narration said Abdullah, giving some narrations on the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. He was narrating, ikhwan, the long narration about those Muslims who would be entered into the hellfire because they had died upon major sin, but that they would be taken out of the hellfire and they would be dipped in the pond or the hawd, and they would be placed in paradise in a pristine fashion after being burned in the hellfire. So when these Khawaarij heard this particular narration, they huddled amongst themselves and began to try to rebuke the companion of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yazid al-Faqir went and said, "Did you hear this from the Messenger of Allah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam?" And he said, "Indeed." So he went back to his companions and he said, "I do not believe that this Shaykh," meaning the companion of the Prophet ﷺ, would lie upon the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. So he mentions, ikhwan, that a large number from amongst them returned to the truth, and there remained from amongst those Khawaarij one who was so hardcore that he would not come back from his innovation. The scholars mention, or they benefit from this particular narration, ikhwan, the importance of sitting with the people of knowledge in the clarification of these particular matters. Because it took a knowledgeable scholar, a companion of the Prophet ﷺ, to clarify to Yazid al-Faqir and those who were with him the correct aqidah of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ and correct knowledge as they had gained from the Prophet ﷺ at the very hands of the Prophet ﷺ. So this shows us, ikhwan, the importance of referring back to Ahlul Ilm, going back to the people of knowledge for the clarification of these issues of innovation. And there is no doubt, ya ikhwan, that it is incumbent upon us, as we see in this narration, to go to those who are akbar, the elders from amongst them, ya ikhwan, as these tabi'een or atba' tabi'een, they went to those who were from the elders with regards to knowledge and trying to benefit from them for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So anyway, ya ikhwan, this shows us the level of dedication of the Khawaarij of old and of those of today, and there is no doubt whatsoever, ikhwan, that from their missions is to spread the ideologies amongst the people of the earth. As we said, ya ikhwan, this sect known as the Khawaarij, the group actually traces their roots back, their ideologies back, actually to the time of the companions, ikhwan. As we said, this group was the first group to split in Islam from al-Jama'ah. And they are named al-Khawaarij, of course, from the verb kharaja, which means to go out or to exit. And in this particular instance, it means to revolt. As they are called the Khawaarij because of their revolt or rebellion against who? Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiyallahu anhu. Ali ibn Abi Talib, whose kunya was? His kunya was? Abu Turab was his nickname. The Prophet gave it to him because of a story. But his kunya was abul-hasan. Barakallahu feekum. Abu Turab, why was he called Abu Turab, Shaykh? Why was he sleeping in the dust? Anybody know the narration? Ahsant. He had a small family altercation like this with his wife Fatima radiallahu anha, and he went to the masjid to sleep, and the Prophet ﷺ found him sleeping in the masjid, and he had dust that covered his side. But the Prophet ﷺ named him Abu Turab, father of the dust, or like this. Nah. The Prophet ﷺ used to give nicknames to his companions like this. And this was actually a means of joking with his companions, ya ikhwan, when he would give them these nicknames. I've mentioned over and over again, for example, the Prophet gave Anas ibn Malik the nickname Dhul Udhunayn, the possessor of the two ears. And some of the scholars say that because he probably had large ears, or like this. Another companion, actually, the companion Mughira ibn Shu'bah, anyone who knows Mughira ibn Shu'bah, his kunya was Abu Isa. And it is said that the Prophet ﷺ gave him the kunya Abu Isa. But I used to joke with his companions. One time a man came and he said his name